What's up, you? You guys ready for Wednesday night? Let's sing this out. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my turn, yeah, till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my turn till I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Yeah. Now your mercy saved my soul. Now your freedom is all bed. I know the old made new. Jesus, when I met you, oh, what a day when you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Come on, sing this out. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing, now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Amen, amen. The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. 'Cause when the darkness falls, it won't prevail. And the God I serve knows only how to triumph. Come on, sing this out. My God will never fail. No, my God will never fail. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Oh, oh, oh. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. Every war he wages, he will win. And I'm not backing down from any giants, 'cause I know how this story ends. And yes, I know how this story ends. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Oh, oh, oh. Yeah. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, and so we pour out our praise to you, only you. Oh, and great are you, Lord. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, and so we pour out our praise to you, only you. And great are you, Lord. Sing all the earth, and all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you, only. We sing great are you, Lord. We sing great are you, Lord. And we sing great are you, Lord. We sing great are you, Lord.
Dear God, we just want to thank you for this wonderful, amazing night where we can get together and just, even though it's on computer, phone, wherever you're at, just to come together and just to be able to worship you, God. It's so crazy that we are able to do this, that we are so fortunate and blessed to be able to come together and still have fellowship because of the amazing things of technology, all the impacts that it's had on us, good and bad. But God, we know we can use it for good. So please bless this night. Bless our talks. I pray for everyone at home that they're staying safe, that they're keeping safe, that they're still continuing to dig deep in the Word and follow you, follow your footsteps, and just keep their eyes on you through this crazy time. God, I pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Just give us just a second, guys. We're just switching around some camera stuff.
All right, good evening.
Welcome to the guys.
Yeah, guys' night.
Guys' night?
Okay, so we wanted to start kind of us dudes were talking and kind of checking in with each other, seeing where we were at, and it occurred to us we're all trusting God, but in way different ways, and it was kind of cool. So we wanted to hone in on that a little bit tonight, and then God started talking to me about the other side of the opposite of trust. So I think we're going to get into talking about fear a little bit too. So I definitely want to share, and we're all going to share where we're at and kind of where God's been pulling us through the Corona time. So for me, I've noticed God's worked with me this way a ton. And in my personal life, we were saving up money. We just paid off a vehicle a few months ago, so we were going to take that money and invest it every month, which means all our money would have been tied up in bills and investment and that sort of thing. But our investor guy didn't get back to us in a timely fashion, and then we were really busy once he did, and I didn't have time to deal with it. So I had 3 months' worth of savings that was supposed to go into an investment, but now it's sitting in my bank account, and then Corona hit, and my investment, had I put all that money into it, would have went from a good amount down to next to nothing. But instead, I have that money in my bank to fall back on. So God provided for me on a personal level, just with having savings set aside, because circumstance, what other people would say, kind of lined up that way. And then on the business end, I run an event company, and we got shut down quicker than anybody because corporations and all this stuff started canceling their events right away. But on that side, I was saving money to buy this building that I'm in, and it's a very expensive building. But again, Corona hit, and I don't really care about buying the building anymore. I mean, I would like it, but I had all this money set aside, which is now this major cushion. So God has always worked with me by almost in opposite ways of the way I hear a lot of testimonies. My testimony is God gave me more than I need, and because I've done the right thing with it, I have it when I actually did need it later on.
Yeah, when you trust him with a little, he's gonna he's gonna allow you to trust him with even more, and you'll be able to do bigger and bigger things for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy to think how far that goes back in your life where you're where God is intentionally planning this out. And, this could go back years and years and years. Yeah. And to think that those years and years and years, you have no clue what's going on. It just shows you how small-minded we are compared to God. It's crazy to just be able to sit back and say, okay, you really do know what's going on. You did this on purpose. And there was a reason for this, for sure. And, a lot of times, like me and Brandon, we talk all the time about, we don't know sometimes where God's taken us. And even Vanessa shared, and then once it happens, you're like, oh, wow, well, this dot had to line up with this dot, had to line up with this dot, and it makes a perfect square, and, it all comes full circle with everything. So it's just cool to see that.
So how about you guys? How's God been navigating your life?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's pretty much all been online. So it's been interesting for sure to see, I say this a lot on Sundays, but to see how people are changing the way that they worship and the way that they kind of encounter God. It's interesting. Like I was watching one of the first weeks that we were live streaming, the Carters sent us a video of them just worshiping, and they had, Beth's playing the keyboard and Tom's playing bass, and the kids are running around crazy, and it was just cool being able to see, how they worship, and so it's just interesting. It was just kind of cool to see that.
Yeah. So how's Corona affected your life? Like, I know your worship, from what I can tell when we talk, you're still busy. You're still.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I have to wear a lot of hats now. So instead of just being like the worship leader or like the media guy, I'm kind of like media has taken like obviously a huge step up. So like now I'm worried about like all this camera stuff, and like I've been doing that for a while anyways. Like I've been doing real estate, cinematography and stuff like that for a while. So it's stuff that I love to do and stuff that I'm really interested in anyways. But it's really cool that I get to use it in this context every single week,
You're a hot item now, Brandon.
Yeah.
You're where it's
That's
at.
my plan the whole time. I just wanted to be the most useful thing so they couldn't get rid of me,
Yeah. So how about you, Bryce?
For me, it's been a weird but also very awesome time. As most of you guys know, got married 2 months ago, almost 2 months ago. And that's really when all this stuff kind of hit. I mean, we were on our honeymoon, and we were the last cruise ship to leave before they really shut everything down. So there's a lot that we can talk about through that whole time of planning. And I just share a cool story. That weekend that we had our wedding was the last weekend that anything was happening in Indiana. We actually had someone at our wedding that was having their wedding either the following week or the week after, I couldn't remember, and they couldn't have it because you can't have over so many people, and everywhere was shut down. And so that day, because my brother was having a trip to New York, which ended up getting canceled, and spring break, and the way everything lined up with my family, that was the only day that we could have it and have our honeymoon that following as soon as we left there. So it's crazy to see that whole thing coming up. Like, there was a reason that day was picked, and the day that our honeymoon was, and all that stuff. It's crazy to go back and see. I was pretty strong-headed about this being the day, and nobody wanted this day to be the day. There was a lot of people who were like, man, I wish you guys would push it till maybe over summer or maybe later. And I'm like, no, I really want this to be the day. We couldn't do it a week later, a week earlier. So it's just cool to see that, after that we've gone through it, to see how it all worked out. All those puzzle pieces fit perfect. And now I've been able to spend, the last 2 months with JC, and she's really had no distractions because of her job. She got laid off, so she's been out of a job the last couple weeks. Thankfully, she's been doing Instacart, which has really helped us out. But it's also been trying. Like I just said, we're just married, and neither of us had a big savings account, especially after the wedding. And that was a stressful time when she lost her job. We all of a sudden went from having no real bills at all, a bunch of people helping us out, letting us. I was living with my parents, she was living with the Shives, and all of a sudden we have rent, and I'm paying for everything for my dog on my own now. I'm trying to find a vehicle and save up for a vehicle, and vehicles are not cheap at all. On top of that, trying to save for a vehicle, paying for everything we're already paying. So, but it's been cool because I haven't really been very stressed out about any of it. When we sat down and did our budget, we had like $500 left over each month, and I thought we were going to be just scraping by. And with everyone helping us out, and the amazing church family that we have, we've been able to really get through it with as little stress as possible, minimal stress. I mean, it's still been stressful, don't get me wrong. But
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
okay.
for
You
sure.
got time. You just got married. So
Yeah.
you'll have plenty of time for stress, for sure. I think it's interesting, though, just seeing, like, even, like, just seeing how God's provided for so many people. I know that there are people who, you know, they don't have a job right now, you know, and they can't get a job right now or whatever, but also seeing the other side of it where God has provided so much for people. Like, for me and Vanessa's been working from home for over a year now, so for us, like, it's been a very beneficial time. I mean, we've had no pay decrease, we've had no time off. Pretty much things for me have changed, but it's just changed shape. It hasn't changed, you know, in the form of being canceled, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Which is awesome.
yeah.
Well, I did want to get into the Bible a little bit tonight because that's why we're here.
Yes, for sure.
This is one of my favorite. If you guys haven't caught on by now, the Old Testament is chock full of the coolest stories of where God showed up. And actually, I was doing devotions with my kids this week, and we're reading through the book of John, and there's a part where it says Jesus is talking, and he's telling his disciples, or it makes a comment about something Jesus said, and it said, "For the Spirit hasn't yet been given." So when you read the Old Testament, you got to keep in mind, they didn't have the Spirit of God inside of them. If they were Christians and they believed, well, I say Christians, but if they were believers in a way that God was going to save their soul, it wasn't because God was inside of them. So they had to live in a weird, I don't know that I would have liked it, to be honest with you. Because I like having the Spirit of God to help me make decisions. When you
it's
get
invaluable, for sure.
peace that surpasses understanding, you don't really get that unless you have the Spirit of God inside of you. So we're going to read one really cool, very bizarre, off-the-wall story. But I want you guys to pay attention to how Elijah's emotions, he's on a roller coaster of emotions. And I think we can all kind of recognize that in our own lives. So I'm going to have Bryce read. We're in 1 Kings chapter 18, starting with verse 22.
How far am I going?
All the way through 19:10.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a little bit of length, but it's very entertaining.
All right. Hopefully all that intensive reading in high school
Can you
comes
repeat
through
that
here.
verse one more time? Just so
We are 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 22, and we're going to read through 19:10.
Someone write that in the chat.
I can do that.
All right, well, while everybody's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and read it because we got a little bit of reading to do. Then Elijah said to them, "I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you can call on the name of your Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God." Then all the people said, "What you say is good." Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose one of the bulls and prepare at first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire." So they took the bull given to them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. "Baal, answer us," they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar that they had made. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. "Shout louder," he said. "Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." So they shouted louder and louder. Slashed themselves with words and spears as they were accustomed, until blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time of the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered, and no one paid attention. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come here to me." They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And he dug a trench around it, large enough to hold 2 size?
Lots of water.
Yes. Yeah, lots of water. We'll just go with that. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. He said to them, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." "Do it again," he said, and they did it again. "Do it a 3rd time," he ordered, and they did it a 3rd time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. At the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all the things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil. It also licked up the water in the trench. And just remember how we stressed how much water was poured on all of that.
Yeah.
So when all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God." Then Elijah commanded them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away." They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to Kishon Valley and slaughtered there. And Elijah said to Ahab, "Go, eat and drink, for there is the sound of the heavy rain." So Ahab went off to eat and drink. But Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees. "Go and look towards the sea," he told his servant. And when he went up and looked, there was nothing there, he said. 7 times Elijah said, "Go back." The 7th time the servant reported, "A cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea." So Elijah said, "Go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." Meanwhile, the sky grew black with clouds. The wind rose and the heavy rain started falling, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. The power of the Lord came on Elijah, and tucking his coat into his belt, he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel.
All right, well, hold on for just a second. So I want to set the picture for you guys. Ahab is married to a really evil woman, and she's murdering every prophet of God. And she's all about worshiping Baal, and she has, what did it say, 422?
450,
an insane amount of her prophets, so to speak. And Elijah's like, I'm literally the only one left. He didn't know God had reserved some other ones, but he thought he was the only one left. And he starts this little competition, so to speak, between Baal and God. He sets this up with people who have been murdering his kind. And he creates these circumstances. And I love where he's making fun of them. Like, maybe your God's asleep. There's one version that says maybe he's hanging a whiz. Like, maybe he's relieving himself is what it says. Yeah. Like, maybe your God's just not paying attention, louder, and they're cutting themselves and all this.
Yeah, just balking at
them. Which is awesome. And then he says he creates this impossible circumstance because he knows in order for God to be proven, there cannot be a shadow of a doubt that it's anything else.
Yeah.
Water, water, water. And then God, fire from heaven, lights it up. It's amazing.
Yeah. I don't know how many of y'all had tried to start a fire with wet wood. It does not go well. So it's very hard.
But imagine what kind of high, what kind of spiritual high you would be on in that environment.
Yeah.
Pumped. And then the very end of that chapter is referring, there's been this drought in the land, and it hasn't rained, I think 3 years or something. And after this, and people are now like, your God is real, Baal is not. Then they killed all 422 or whatever of the Baal worshipers. Yep. And that's where he goes, go look out in the horizon. And that's where it starts talking about the cloud. So he's like, water's coming now, you know. And then God gives him this supernatural speed to run ahead of a chariot being pulled by horses to beat the king to the place they're going. Again, spiritual high, like nobody's business. Like, I would think, I'm at the top of the world, invincible. It would have been hard not to get a little like, you know, I got this, but in a great place. So now let's see what happens in the beginning of chapter 19.
Yeah, so we're starting in the beginning of chapter 19 for those of y'all who are following along. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them." Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him. "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up, ate, and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down all your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too."
Coming off that mountain
Yeah, for sure.
again, how can you go from that level to being so afraid you just he wished he was dead,
Yeah.
right? It just shows that it doesn't matter where you're at with God. There are some things that hit you in this place that cause you to be afraid. So I want to park here, and for you guys at home, I want you to chime in. What are the kinds of things that maybe draw that fear reaction out of you? How about you, Brandon?
Fear.
Yeah.
For me, I think that's my biggest struggle in life is fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough. I think is one of the major things in my life is I could go through this experience where God's like, "I have picked you specifically for this, like I've given you these skills and this ability for this specific reason. This is why you're on the earth." And then the next minute I feel like, but like that person's better than me though.
Yeah.
Like I'll hear
You're
someone.
like, "I'm not worthy."
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll hear someone sing or something. I'm like, dang, like, and then I start to get self-conscious. I start to have that fear of like, am I really good enough? Do I really deserve this? In a lot of ways.
Yeah. What about you, Bryce?
I'd say my biggest fear is not doing what God wants me to do, is jumping too hard into something and oh my goodness, obviously God closed this door and I was a dummy head and didn't see it being shut, slammed in my face, things like that. Am I making the right decision? I've had a lot of talks with Pastor Dave about that kind of stuff, and he's kind of given me some wisdom and some wisdom talks on those subjects, and that has helped me tremendously work through a lot of the problems and fears that I've had, whether it's choosing a job, I really thought God had this one plan for me, and I really had this set in my head. I was going to own this business. I was going to work for him until I owned it, and blah, 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 all the way down the road. And then, just like your business, way long time ago, he started planning you for this moment. And it was the same thing for me. I wasn't making a lot of money doing what I was doing. I definitely wasn't making enough money to provide for a family.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this job opportunity came up. And normally, I was just like, whatever, it's just another job opportunity. I know what God wants me to do. I was so stubborn-headed on that. And then it was my uncle who actually brought it up to me, and he was like, "Hey, man, I really think you should look into this." And I was like, okay, I guess I'll look into it, whatever. And, man, I am so glad that I did. Because if I didn't, there's no way. I mean, I literally don't even know if we would be able to pay rent, if we would be able to do anything right now.
Yeah.
So.
And it's so interesting because we talked a lot during that time,
Yeah.
just like talking about, like, how do you even listen to God because me and Bryce are in the same D group, so we talk a lot about that kind of stuff, and it's interesting kind of walking through that with you, seeing like, because there was weeks where we're like, nah, we're pretty sure you're not supposed to take this job.
Yeah.
And then there was weeks where it was like God would reveal something and be like, maybe.
Yeah.
And then there was weeks where we're like, maybe God doesn't even care. Like maybe you can just
maybe
do
I
whatever. And
either path.
either path would be good. So it's interesting to kind of see.
I think on some levels, I think there are times when I think there's a road God gives us, and it's really big. And he says, you're in my will anywhere on this road. But every now and then that road comes to a very fine point.
Yeah.
And you have one option to honor God and do what he wants. And that's going to change the direction of the road after that. But most of the time, I feel like, and again, from a gray old man, his wisdom, if you made the choice that God, like if when you have a kid and your kid's like really stressing, I really want to make dad happy, but I don't know which way to go. Does he want this color on his card or this color? You're not going to care because you love the heart's intent. Mm-hmm. And if you really did care, you'd be like, hey, man, I really want it blue. Right? You would let him know on the side or whatever. So I think if God really lets you know, you probably want to lean into that. And if he doesn't, you just have to say, God, please stop me if I'm going the wrong way. You know my heart. I just want to follow you. But there's this opportunity. Yeah. So I've had someone even older than me say, love God and do whatever you want. If you can love God and put that first, whatever you want will line up with what loving God looks like.
Yeah, that's what Jesus says when he's talking to the rich young ruler, It's love God with everything that you have, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And then you don't have to worry about anything else. As long as you do those things, then everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, a couple people in the group chat, Taylor Giddens said, I would say my fear is like Brandon's, not feeling good enough and comparing myself to others. And also kind of like Bryce's, being scared that I'm not doing what God wants me to do. Kyle says, a fear of disappointed and failure is tough, but I'm trusting in God and his plan for me. Avery says she's a mix of me and you, Brandon as well.
Maybe we need to be like the Incredible Hulk in the Avengers, where they're like, how do you control it? He's like, I'm always angry, right? Maybe we just realize we aren't good enough.
Yeah.
We're just not. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't matter in God's plan. Like Elijah was one dude against all of these. He poured water on it. Elijah had no power of his own to make that happen.
Yeah, that's true.
But he leaned on God. But then he got afraid. So I am curious, how do you guys handle your fear? Elijah just went and like wallowed up and I just want to die. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you guys handle being afraid? No, as a Christian man, knowing that God is in control, and I'm sure you remind yourself of these things. But how do you guys navigate when times in life are fearful?
Man, for me, it's sometimes I honestly don't know how I would walk through certain things in life without people like Brandon in my life, and without people like you in my life who I have a trust and a bond with, that I can go and talk to about anything, that I can go with my deepest, darkest secret that I don't want anyone knowing. And I know going to you, you're still going to love me through it all, and you're still going to care for me and help me get through whatever I'm going to get through. That's really what's helped me, is surrounding myself with godly people who, because I'm young, I'm only 21, I can go to and say, this is how my unwise 21-year-old self is thinking about it. How would you do it? Because I know you've gone through this stuff. Yeah. And it's, I have
everything, so you can listen to everything.
Yeah, it's crazy because not only do I have like my dad, one person who has one personality of dealing with things. I have Brandon, who's a completely polar opposite of my dad, and I have Dave Shive, who's polar opposite of everybody. And and just, there's just a lot of different ways, so many different angles people are looking at and mirroring, and it's just so cool to be able to sit back and say, okay, I don't have to do this on my own. Because as guys, that's the biggest thing the devil tries to put on us. Oh, you're going through this by yourself. Oh, if you go talk to somebody, they're going to think you're weird, and what you're talking about is just stupid, and they're going to laugh at you, which makes us all box into this corner, right? And we get afraid, and I feel like, we shouldn't even be afraid of this one little part. And then, we get a little bit of afraid, and then we let the devil's lies come into our head, and that's what really sets us back. I think a lot of people are fearful, but it's when that second part comes in that it really steps up to that next level. So trusting in God and praying and seeking wisdom through everybody is how I deal with things.
Yeah, I think for me, I guess I don't really worry about things. Like, if at any point in our marriage, like, we haven't had money for something, like, it's never really crossed my mind that, like, things aren't going to happen. And I attribute that to my mom because, you know, I grew up in a household where we weren't sure if we were going to have, you know, groceries sometimes the next week. You know, my mom, when I was in the beginning of high school, declared bankruptcy, and our family was not doing well. You know, it was a very bad situation. So for me, like, even through all of that, like, I never had a question that God was going to provide. So it's always been a strong kind of point in my life where, like, I don't have to worry about things. I just know that God's going to take care of me no matter what. So
yeah, that brings me actually to one of my verses, couple of my verses that I've written down. One is in Proverbs 25, 26, and 27. The greedy stir up conflict, but those who trust in the Lord will prosper. Those who trust in themselves are fools, but those who walk in wisdom are kept safe. Those who give to the poor will lack nothing, but those who close their eyes to them receive many curses. I have another verse I've written down, Philippians. Philippians chapter 4, verse 19. Let me see if I can find the start of it. And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Jesus Christ. To our God, the Father, be the glory forever and ever. Amen. And, you know, it's so important to keep your eyes set on Jesus. When you're in those times where you're like, oh, man, I really need some help. And then all of a sudden, you know, you get the help and you're like, all right, cool, thanks, Jesus. Peace out. See you next time I need help. Like, you can't do that. God's going to reward you for staying in the Word and staying connected with him and having a relationship with him through it all. Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
What about you, Jonathan?
I saw this really funny thing on a movie one time. He's like, I find the source of my pain and I just break its legs. On some levels, there's things that I know how to fight. I know how to fight greed, which sometimes comes inside of me. Mm-hmm. You make yourself go give. You just do it. So when it comes to fear, it's almost like it does rile me up inside. And I go after not letting it, like, it's almost like the source of my, unless it's spiders or roaches. But if it's like real legitimate outside of creepy crawly stuff, it almost makes me like I have to go after it. I'm going to walk in this because I know it's the right thing to do. And just because I'm scared, it almost is like the fact that you're scared means you doubly have to do it. It's like I want to double down on it. So some of you guys online talked about clinging to the Word of God. Like Taylor said, that's, you know, we've mentioned that. Avery said it's sometimes really hard to cope very well. Getting stressed and anxiety takes over. And those times we all just feel like it's spinning around in circles, don't know where to go, don't know who to talk to. So I think we've all experienced that on some level. And the more mature you get, the more you start to recognize your triggers and find out like, oh, I'm starting to really feel nervous. My wife has helped me. There's been times when money has been like a fear of mine where I thought part of my business was crumbling down, and God used her after like 2 or 3 days of me spinning, of knowing God's in control. I know it, but I didn't feel it. And then after those days, my wife is like, you just got to relax. It doesn't matter if we lose all this stuff. We have our family, you know, and her calmness in that scenario was God's way of just putting it inside of me. And when two are one, sometimes part of you ain't working so well, and God's like, I'm going to use the other part to get you where I want you to be.
Yeah, the end of what Avery said there, and I isolate myself to be able to calm down and talk to someone about how I'm feeling and get help facing my fears. I think that's helpful sometimes, but I think it can be harmful too.
Yes.
I think you have to be careful about isolating yourself, and that's why, like Bryce was saying, you know, me and him being really good friends, I know that if I ever have an issue, or if I am in that, you know, anxious place, or that even like a depressed place, which I don't get often, but if I were, I would go to Bryce first. He would be the guy. Everybody hear that motorcycle outside?
Yeah, there's like 20 of them outside.
Yeah, there's like a million motorcycles.
Wish I could be there. JC.
But I know that I can always go to Bryce, or I can go to Dave, or I can go to any of the pastors and talk to them about that kind of stuff. And throughout the years, that's been my growing points, has been the times when I've been in, the valley, but someone else has reached down and helped me to get up the other side. So
yeah. And then I've mentioned it in the group too. I have WTH prayers where I feel like God has told me, you'll go talk to Bryce, you'll go talk to your friend and complain about, marriage, you'll complain about kids, you'll complain about work, you'll complain about all these things. Why don't you ever complain about that to me? Like, I'm your father who can help you with all of it, but you don't bring it to me, you take it to everybody else. So it is good to get Christian fellowship and to have that solid feedback from humans who know how you feel. But I also say, take it to God, and if you're mad at God or super scared or freaking out, just go to him, let him know. And if anybody can help you, that's who can, is God.
Yeah.
So I do want, it is important. Fear is defined as an unpleasant feeling triggered by the perception of danger, real or imagined. So fear is not necessarily something the devil created. Fear is something God has given us so that we're not lemmings. We're not just walking to our death every time we turn around because we're not afraid of anything.
Right.
Fear, a fire is there. I'm not going to, if I get too close to it, it makes you back off. That's self-preservation. So there is a type of fear that is good and natural, but the devil wants to twist it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys can go ahead and start putting in prayer requests if you want. We're going to be there in a little bit, so just put them in the chat. We'll get to them.
So how do you guys think, I want to shift a little bit from fear to faith. So how do you guys feel like perspective affects how you fear things? Like if you had a different perspective, do you think you would still be scared of whatever it is?
Yeah, I'm afraid of the dark. That's why. Because I don't have a perspective of what's in the dark. And so I think that, when I'm walking around and I hear a scary noise in the middle of the forest and I'm by myself, of course I'm going to be afraid. But if it's daytime and I see that there's a rabbit right next to me, obviously I won't be,
Yeah.
Right.
For me, when I walk through the house, I turn out the lights. As soon as the last light is out, I'm pretty sure somebody's behind me with a knife. And I have to talk to myself. You're a grown man. You know. You're smarter than this. But when it's real life fears, not, I'm scared of spiders or roaches, but when it's like you're worried about big life choices.
Yeah.
You said it. If we, God had started way long ago, lining things up for you.
Yeah.
And if we just knew that, then we would be afraid of nothing.
Well, yeah, and we wouldn't really have to put our trust in God.
We wouldn't. You're right.
That's the big thing for me. We're basically playing God at that point if we want. I don't want to know it. I mean, it would be cool, but when I sit back and think about it, man, that's a place for God and only God to know everything. Yeah. If I knew everything, we would be in trouble. So
Bryce
all right.
becomes president.
I do want to. I want to read Psalms 23 because I think this is a pretty good psalm dealing with this.
Psalm 20.
It's a pretty popular one too.
I got so many notes coming out of here. I got so many little tabs.
Well, look at how Christian Bryce is. So many notes. So many sticky notes coming out of his Bible.
Yeah. Anyways, wrong one. I was in 1 Kings.
It's in the middle of the Bible.
All right, Psalms 23. All Psalms 23?
Yeah. It's a good one. It's not too long.
All right. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, for your rod and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me through all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Yeah, so he says, even though I walk through, I'm saying probably King James, or in the valley of the shadow of death.
Yes.
You're with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. What do you think he means? Like, David's getting his comfort. David's the one who wrote this one. He's in the valley of the shadow of death, which is a scary place, in other words. Yeah. And he's saying, I'm comforted. You're with me, and your rod and staff comfort me. What do you think he's talking about?
Shepherd's implements.
Yeah. And what are they good for?
Hitting and guiding.
Yeah. Guidance and protection.
Yeah. So
David didn't say, I'm in the valley of the shadow of death all by my dang self, and I'm just trusting you, and that's good enough. He's acknowledging, I'm here, and you're with me. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I find comfort, because I know you guide me, and I know you protect me. Doesn't mean I'm getting out of this valley anytime soon,
right?
But I can be here and be okay.
Because he's won.
Yeah.
Because you know in the end where your victory is and who takes it.
Yeah. So I do like, I love David. This dude has some really cool stuff. We were going to do a reading about the David and Goliath thing, but I can paraphrase this. When he's about to fight Goliath, King Saul's like, dude, you're just a little kid. Why should I let you go fight this giant when we have a whole army here? And David says this, when I was a shepherd and a bear came and took one of my sheep, I went and I killed that bear. Right. And then later, a lion came and took one of my sheep. I went and killed the lion. And because of that, and because I'm feeling it, I feel God is going to take Goliath down just like one of those. So what I love about that, when you read between the lines, is David is literally saying, he's at that point at the end of a movie when all the things that were weird that are now lining up, and you're like, this is why. This is exactly why. He looks at his life in the face of a massive problem, and he says, I can see God's trajectory for my life has brought me here, which gives me comfort. It gives me peace. And yeah, I'm going to go fight this big giant, which I imagine he had like butterflies galore, but not debilitating. Right. He didn't let it stop him, and he trusted God for it. Mm-hmm. So especially you guys in the youth, pay attention to your life. Pay attention to things that are going on. And when something's weird and you're like, man, that really stinks, think about it again in a few weeks. Think about it again in a year from now and think, that was uncomfortable, but if I didn't have that, I would have never moved from where I was in my comfort to this other place, and this other place is now why I've blossomed in this way I never would have before. Mm-hmm. When you start seeing that, you don't see things as much bad or good anymore. You just see them as comfortable or uncomfortable, knowing when something bad has happened, I have a God that loves me. I know that. So if it doesn't feel good, then he really must want something else to happen in my life.
Yeah.
Right? Have you guys ever had those moments where now that you look back, you're like, man, that...
Yeah, for sure. I think the first ministry position that I had, it was definitely God moving me. It was the first time that I'd ever left TBA, and so it was interesting to me. But as I got into that position, it only took a few months for God to be like, okay, I just used this as like a stepping stone for you, and he quickly moved me into my first real position in ministry, which is where I met Vanessa, and everything else happened from there, So it was interesting because I remember sitting in services at the first church that I was working with, and it was like, man, like, why does this not feel right at all, Yeah. And it was things that it just kept on getting worse and worse, and I was like, why am I here? Like, what have you done to me, And but obviously he made it work for his good, and
I'm sure you were sitting there thinking, man, did I miss a door? Did I, did I go the right direction the way that God wanted? Did I go the wrong direction? And is that why I don't feel, this way? But, everything, what Pastor Dave really expressed to me was you're going to go through everything, and everything that you do, as long as you're looking to God, is going to be a part of God's plan. If you're looking and engaging in the Word and seeking His will for your life, He's going to open up doors, and those doors that you step through, they're going to be fruitful, and you don't need to be afraid of that.
Yeah. So here's the last idea I feel like God has given me for this. When you guys are all little kids, the person taking care of you, your mom, your dad, uncle, grandparents, whoever, they could do everything. They were amazing. They were indestructible. They're going to be here forever. They're awesome. There's nothing ever wrong. Even more so, your girlfriend when you first met her, or your boyfriend, oh, they're perfect. There's nothing wrong with this person.
Yep.
The more that you get to know them, you're getting knowledge about that person. And you realize your parents don't know everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes they make poor decisions. With God, it should be the opposite. The more you get to know about God, the more that you know he is worthy.
Yeah,
he is in control. He's all powerful. If I'm close to him, nothing can hurt my eternal position with him.
Yeah.
You know, nothing can get in the way. And he says, I'll meet your needs. Not everything you want, but I'll meet your needs at the very least. And you can have faith about that. So what's something you've learned about God that you didn't know before, and once you learned it, you're like, oh, man, it just means so much to me now?
Go ahead.
I think it's interesting because I think that God is very simple to understand, and yet he's not.
Yeah.
And so I think that even from a young age, I had a very clear idea of who God was. But it wasn't until specific moments in my life, and it's hard because being a youth leader, you guys, it's very hard for us because there's certain things that we just want to jam into your head because God has revealed it in our lives, but he hasn't revealed it to you yet. And one of those moments for me was I received a letter from my brother, and it was just essentially it was like in the letter he just told me how much he loved me and that he looked up to me, even though I'm his younger brother, you know. He looked up to me, and in some ways, you know, he envied me in the things that I, you know, am doing in the way that I'm living my life. And like I just bawled like a baby reading that letter, and it made me realize, like, if my brother actually loves me this much, like how much more does God love me? And that's when it really clicked in my mind of like, oh, like he actually like loves me like infinitely, you know. And it didn't click until that moment for sure.
Yeah.
For me, it like we've been talking about, that God has a puzzle piece for every part of my life, and the puzzle might be getting close to being finished, or you know, it could be a long ways away. But for the first time that I saw that, I was actually at a youth retreat, and we were all, Pastor Dave had all these letters written out, and he basically told everyone, you know, I was going to give these to you, but just so you can see how cool God is, I'm going to let you pick these letters yourself, and God's going to guide them into your hands. And I was like, whatever, man. Like, I'm in middle school, and I'm like, dude, this is so stupid. They're probably all like the same letter, and they're just like a generalization. But I was really struggling with something at the time. I can't remember what I was struggling with, but I kind of sat back and I kind of took it as a joke for a while, and then I was like, you know what, let me take this serious. I said, you know what, God, I'm really going to put this to the test, and I'm going to stand back, I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to walk to the table, and I'm going to put my hand down on the table, and that'll be the letter for me. So I was like, you know, I was challenging God, kind of like the altar, you know. I was like, you know, you're gonna show me that you're God and that you guide every step of my life. If you can't guide me from this table, or from where I'm at 6 feet away from this table to the table, and put a letter in my hand, then how am I going to trust you? Yeah. No lie. I closed my eyes, and everyone was up there jumbled around, and I just started walking. And I thought I was going to hit somebody because everyone was up there. Started walking, and I hit the edge of the table. So I was like, okay. I put my hand down, and there was only one letter left. And that letter was the exact thing that I needed to hear. I remember that. I don't remember what I was struggling with, but I remember that so clearly, that literally I put my hand on the table, I looked to the left, no letters. Looked to the right, no letters. And everyone else had sat down already. And I went, man. I mean, it still gives me goosebumps now just thinking about how, you know, I was like, oh, God, do this. And bam, he hit me upside the head with a 2x4. Like, you know, just realizing that God has a plan for my life, and it's not just me free-flowing through everything and just, you know, rolling with the punches and stuff.
That's awesome. And nobody can take that story
Nobody.
away from you or tell you that it's coincidence or
Mhm.
anything else.
Yeah, because that was all in my heart.
You
And
can build-
I've had many, not many, but there's probably 3 or 4 stories like that I've shared with Brandon about praying and you know, feeling like there's a hand being placed on my shoulder.
It's
and
almost
there's
like
no-
God is real and he
Yeah,
loves us and wants to show us things.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I think for me, it's been mostly, sometimes I just have a hard time being patient with an individual type of a person or something. I'm not saying racist or anything. I'm just saying like certain people really rub me the wrong way.
Yeah, I know
cheerleaders,
how
how
you feel.
But it occurred to me, God has patience for them
Mm-hmm.
and everybody else in this entire world.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind when I've had so much trouble keeping my cool with one person, and yet God is doing that with everybody at all times. I'm like, if I was God, this whole place would have been burned to the ground a long time ago, because even the people who say they love me spit in my face left and right. They don't care sometimes. This gift I've given them, they trample all over it, and they say they love me. And that's the best I can get from people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
You
think,
guys
yeah,
ready for some prayer requests?
wrap it
Yeah,
up.
there's been a couple in the group chat, some good ones too.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll just kind of go through and read a couple of these first, and then we'll get to praying. So, Ashlyn says, please pray for my family. Taylor says, pray that we won't neglect going to youth just because it's online, or no one will know, or it's more fun to do other things. Kind of sad the numbers are going down, not as many people engaging in chat. I agree. If you're in the chat right now, just like say hey. That would really help us out, and it'll help with an exercise I want to do at the very end. So if you're in the chat right now, just give a thumbs up or just say hi so that we know you're here.
And that's a prayer request, but it's also something that you guys can help out with.
Yeah, I just saw
You
Gage
guys-
outside. He was riding with the motorcycle.
Yeah.
So everybody shoot Gage a text.
Yeah, shoot him a text, say you missed him. Don't be harsh. You know, just say, hey man, missed you tonight. Hopeful to see you next week. You guys are all need to be really close and grow a relationship with God together and be that accountability partner, because you're going to need those going through life. And I tell you what, you know, sometimes I slack on some things, and when Brandon is like, yo, dude, why you slacking? It kind of pushes me to not slack on those things anymore. So it does help. I don't know how many of you guys have experienced much accountability, but I can tell you, once you start, it's like a love-hate relationship, kind of.
Yeah.
You don't want to stop, but you're also like, man, I hate when this guy texts me out of nowhere and asks how I'm doing when I'm doing terrible, and I have to tell him all about my day or tell him, you know, this and that. And, you know, who knows, maybe tonight this person that hasn't been in the youth live stream or whatever, he could be struggling so hard thinking thoughts that no one ever is waiting for someone to text and say, hey, man, how you doing?
Yeah.
I talked to a kid this week, not anyone from our youth group, kid I went to high school with. I kind of saw he was struggling. I texted him, and he was like, man, these last 2 weeks, like, I don't know what's going on. So I'm trying to get him to go through a Bible study with me on YouVersion and things like that. So all it takes is that one little step to reach out.
Yeah.
That could branch and blossom into something really beautiful and awesome and bring you close to a really good friend.
Yeah. Look at all these names real quick, guys. Just look at the names that, you know, imagine the faces of people that you haven't seen for, you know, 6 or 7 weeks now, and, you know,
Imagine
think
them
about
with
them.
more hair, though.
Yeah, my hair's going crazy right now, guys.
I'm going to get a mullet.
We'll all just take Jonathan's hairstyle.
Free haircuts for everybody.
Was there anything else in the group chat I didn't see?
We can go ahead and pray.
Kyle,
And,
did you talk about Kyle?
Go ahead.
I pray that we'll be able to enjoy this time and get into good, fruitful habits.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep, it's good, especially when you have accountability
Yeah.
to help get you in there. My wife has been pushing me on that. She's been doing devos every morning, and I've been slacking really hard. So she's been kind of tossing that out there. But
Right on.
I'll start, and then you want to go, and then
okay.
Bryce. God, I just thank you for this time that we have to spend with you. I thank you for motivating us through this time. I know that, especially our high schoolers and middle schoolers. I can't imagine having to do school from home. I probably would have been absolutely horrible at that. But God, I just pray for them for motivation to get through this next few weeks if they're not already out, and just for them to be able to finish strong and get into the summer. God, I know things are going to be different. I know things are starting to open up and all of that. But God, I pray that it gets better and not worse. I pray that you're protecting everybody that is, at the beach or in a restaurant or just anywhere, God. I pray that you continue to protect them and let your will be done, whatever that looks like. God, I just thank you for all the youth and all the people that are in the chat right now and that are in this live stream, that are watching it later. Maybe we're watching it a year from now, 2 years from now, thinking back on how weird this time was. But God, I just pray for anybody watching right now that they will just be able to dig into you, me included, God, that we'll be able to get rid of all those other things in our lives and be able to choose you. God, why don't we choose you? We put everything else before you, and so God, just allow us to do that as we go.
God, I want to thank you for being who you are. There's not a single person on this world who could do what you do, or even understand half the reasons why you do what you're doing, or how you make it all work. But I pray for this youth group that you would help this time to be a time where they can lean into you to grow in trust, that they can remember the things that you've done in their life, and they can build on that, God, especially in a time like this when we know that one of the tactics the devil likes to use is to separate people. And we're kind of forced to be separated in some regards right now on a major scale. And when people, especially people with some kind of mental disorder or something, and there's a very high percentage of people who just have something going on, it can be really tough, God. So I will pray that you pour your spirit into them and show them how much that you love them. And I'm thankful that we are in an age where technology is so prevalent, where even though we're not always going to be able to be physically with somebody, you can FaceTime, you can really get close to somebody without having to be near them, which is crazy, and it's awesome and amazing. So I pray that our youth group will be a group of people who are paying attention to those who they haven't heard from in a while, the people who just stop talking and stop communicating, that they'll reach out to them, that you will bring people to their mind who they need to just check in on and say hi and strike up a conversation and let them know that somebody's thinking about them and somebody loves them. God, and I just, that's my biggest prayer, that we don't lose any youth, not just in our group, but at all, of people who have been having negative thoughts, and nobody's around to see it, nobody's around to talk them out of anything. So I just pray that you'll be with them in that regard.
Well, God, I just want to thank you for an awesome night coming together and talking about you and be able to interact with people that I haven't seen in quite some time and talk with people who I haven't seen in quite some time. I just want to thank you for just being able, it's so refreshing to come to just a little gathering like this and be refreshed by digging into your word and realizing how important it is to be in your word every single day. So God, I pray this over the youth group. I know being at home, you can get lazy. I get distracted watching YouTube videos, all kinds of crazy stuff. Next thing you know, you've been on YouTube for 3 hours and you didn't even realize it. God, I pray that you would just open their eyes to make them realize that you need to be a first priority throughout all day, every day. And that goes for me as well. I've been slacking on that. So that goes for me, and I'm sure many of the other adult leaders are in the same boat, right along with the youth. So God, I just pray for a hedge of protection over everybody. Pray for everyone who has gotten the virus, who has taken the precautions to stay away from the virus and stayed clean and healthy. I pray that everyone would continue to stay healthy. And in your name I pray. Amen.
Awesome. Real quick. So I want you guys to look back and look at everybody that said hey or hi. I want you guys for the next 5 minutes. We're going to come back, and I'm going to give you guys a surprise after 5 minutes, okay?
Ooh.
But for 5 minutes, I want you guys to pick a name in the chat, and I want you guys to write out a prayer in the chat for that person, okay? So pick someone. It doesn't have to be someone you know super well. It could be just a random name, but I want you to pick a person, write out a prayer for them, and then post it in the chat, okay, for the next 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll have a short surprise, okay? Cool. See you guys in a little bit.
Surprise.
All right, guys. This is one of my songs I wrote right at the beginning of this thing. So, yeah, here it is. Why is everybody so worried or run around living life so hurried? Take another seat, take a second, and take another breath from the God who's given it. From the food that we eat, the people that we meet, the songs that we sing, yeah, you're in it all. When there's darkness all around, I'll seek your face. When I cannot find my strength, you lead the way. When you reach into the coals, I know that you will save me. You'll save me. Why we always running out of time when the God that we serve is saying it's mine? All I want to do is to create for the power and the glory and the wonder of your name. Bring to me a new life, bring to me a new side, so I can see, I can sing, I can say eternally, yeah. When there's darkness all around, I'll seek your face. When I cannot find my strength, you lead the way. And when you reach into the coals, I know that you will save me. Whoa. When you fall, you'll catch me, I run. You chase me around to the ends of the earth until I know your name is higher, your name is great, and I'll sing it again until everyone knows. When I fall, you catch me, I run. You chase me around to the ends of the earth until I know your name is higher, your name is great, and I'll sing it again until everyone knows. When there's darkness all around, I'll seek your face. When I cannot find my strength, you lead the way. And when you reach into the coals, I know that you will, you will. When there's darkness all around, I'll seek your face. When I cannot find my strength, you lead the way. And when you reach into the coals, I know that you will save me. You'll save me. When I fall, you catch me, I run. You chase me around to the ends of the earth until I know your name. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.